Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen. All right. Let's try to mute ourselves if you can. Mute. All right. So today, let me go to my lesson here. The main class website is artappreciationsdce.com. And if you scroll down here to today, happy Halloween, by the way. We have Winslow Homer today. And let me open my for you. Oops. Let me start it from the beginning. No, not new slide. Okay. All right. So today we're talking about Winslow Homer. He is one of the great American artists. And he was born in 1836. So we're talking about very early time and the Civil War coming. He's born into the Civil War. He was born in Boston and then raised in Cambridge. And he had two brothers, and he was the let me mute some of you. He was the middle of three brothers, and his mother was a watercolorist, just sort of a, at-home watercolor. She wasn't professionally trained. She might have taken a few classes, but he was interested in drawing from a very young age, and his father saw that he had skill in drawing. His father wasn't really a very good businessman, and there were a lot of times when their family had to depend on other family members to help them out. So he didn't grow up with much, but he lived a very happy life growing up, and his parents definitely supported his art dream, or it wasn't his dream yet. His father, in fact, found him a job, his first job at the age of 18 at John Buffert's lithography studio. So there he started drawing illustrations for piano music. And that's really where he started getting so much better at drawing. And when we start looking at his paintings, to me, it's so interesting to see. Here is an example of some of the piano covers that he was doing. So for sheet music, for example, he would design some of the covers. And so we're looking at very early work here where he's 18 years old. So we can see already that he's really a sense of skill, drawing skill. He's already drawing the figure in a beautiful way. You can see that he's got shadows. Uh-oh. I see it says my internet connects, so I hope everyone can hear me. If I'm cutting out and it's really bad, please send a message in, like send me a text message, not a text message, but chat message to let me know if for some reason it's getting bad, because I can't tell on my end. So please let me know. Okay, so back to what we're doing here. So we're looking at piano sheet music. Someone would just buy this book and he would have the cover would have been done by him. Here's another example. So we're looking at very early work, 18, 19, 20-year-old boy learning how to draw, obviously has some innate skill starting out, and he's really just drawing every day, all day, and he gets really good, really, really good. So this to me is like so important, because I'm always telling everybody, just draw, just draw, just draw, just draw. And what you'll learn from Homer is tone, composition, and it's because he draws. It's because he obviously has an amazing skill, but the tone, the darks and lights, you'll often notice how dark are that he puts composition versus how light things are in his composition. So as he grows up, he gets better and better, and then he lands a very good job at Harper's Weekly doing the Civil War drawings. So he's depicting what's going on in the war, and he actually goes and lives during the war with the army men. So this is a very dangerous job. Essentially, he's like, a reporter, but a visual reporter. So instead of writing an article, he's drawing a picture about the war to help people understand what's going on. So here, these are lithographs that he's done the original drawing from. So he's known as a printmaker, an oil painter, and a watercolorist. Again, just take a look here. We're looking at Army Man in a tree. We can see very often that Winslow Homer hides some of the faces, and that is because I heard another interview, and he said he didn't really like drawing faces, but also that I'm trying to mute someone, okay, well, it's not working. I lost my train of thought. He's doing army paint drawings, but what you're looking at here, is that he covers the faces a lot of times because he thinks that the gesture of the figure is more important, and it's telling more of the story than necessarily the facial expression of the person. And I'm one who's known for putting blankets over my figures, so I agree with that in a lot of ways, but I do think facial features are very important for expressive moments sometimes. But you'll see that he often covers some of the faces. And so again, just thinking about tones, thinking about maybe a grayscale. Look at how light the whites are back here in the brightest point, and the darkest darks are on the figure. So this is what we call backlighting. We have our brightest whites in the middle, and then we have our darkest darks in the foreground, the closest thing to us. So he's telling us where to look by his lighting, and he's telling us, they didn't want to have war drawings that were really graphic and gruesome, because nobody wants to open a paper and see that, their child may be at war or something like that. So it was really more about depicting the characters in a more valiant way. Here is a more graphic lithograph that may have been printed in Harper's Weekly. So you can see again, he's done backlighting again. We have the brightest whites in the back here, and we have the darkest darks in the foreground. You will also see that in comics a lot. You'll see it in a lot of graphic novels and illustrators. It's an illustrator thing, but it's also a tonal thing. It's also a compositional choice. It's also helping the viewer travel through the lights to understand where we're supposed to look at this main figure here. All of it is about this sort of these figures here and here. So this is a much more graphic scene, but obviously war is graphic, and so you have to depict what's going on. And he is literally living these men, risking his life to make these drawings. Another beautiful lithograph, obviously we're looking at war. Again, this one has a slightly different lighting. You can see that maybe it's dusk. So again, he's telling us a story with his lighting. Mute, mute, mute. Okay, trying to mute everybody. Still hear someone. There we go. Okay. So maybe, or after the bombs have gone off. So what we're really looking at here is, the fog is sort of settling. Maybe it's early morning, maybe it's dusk, but obviously the fight is over and we're looking at the aftermath. So now he's dealing with a much more gray, just grays, not as many lights or darks, definitely not as many lights. We only have a few little lights right here, like where the sun may just be peeking through on these guys who may have made it. You can see that he made it through, and then there's the one standing soldier. Wow, you get a lot of emotion from these pieces, and I can't imagine what it would have been like to be in that scene. However, this depiction of what's going on is a really powerful image. So, or maybe this is the sleeping time. Let's see, what does it say? Army of the Potomac sleeping on their arms. Okay, so then, like I said, his draftsman skills improved so much that he then became a freelance illustrator. He leaves Harper Weekly, decides to move to New York City. He also does some traveling. He does some trips to Europe and to the Bahamas and other places where he takes vacations. And that's where he starts doing some of his watercolors, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In New York City, he takes some classes with Frederick Rondell, who's a landscape painter, and he did a year at the National Academy of Design, but he very much, and again, like his mother was a watercolorist, but he says he really had no formal training and he was mostly self-taught, mostly self-taught from being an illustrator at a very young age. So now we're going to take a look at some of his oil paintings. So we know these paintings. These are some of the most famous American paintings by any American artist ever. Again, let's take a moment to think about the color that's happening. Even though we're looking at color, the light is in the back, the midground is a darker, and the foreground is the darkest, minus the white shirt of the highlight coming across him. So he's often dividing up the space compositionally. He's done it into thirds in this case, so yeah, almost thirds. The top and bottom are a little smaller, but that's a compositional choice. You never really divide a landscape right in half, and you'll see that he does that. He really has a sense of composition, and I don't know if it's just that he's a genius. I mean, obviously he's a genius, but also how much of this was just drawing every day for years and years and years to really understand light. As painters, we're just creating an illusion on a two-dimensional surface, but we're creating it says my internet. We're creating a three-dimensional illusion on a two-dimensional surface. So we're really playing with light and trying to describe light. And if you want to know how to describe light, look no further than Winslow Homer. You can see, again, he's got the brightest sky in the background, but then these shirts are light and bright, so you can, if you squint your eyes, you can really see how bright white these shirts are. So maybe, we know these boys are the main character. This is called Snap the Whip. And then he's given us some mid-ground colors in the back. There's movement. There is, again, he's breaking up the space for us. We've got a narrative of these boys playing, and he's given us little wonderful details, like look at the dark shadows underneath each of the boy, look at the darks in the bottom left corner, and then look at the darks in the trees behind the boys. So it is really these darks back here that allow you to see these boys much better. Had he left this lighter, they wouldn't be as clear. Here, again, we have this dark green butting up to this bright white shirt, which helps it look brighter. We have this dark red and this black, which helps make this white look more illuminated. So he really understands color and he really understands tone. And he really understands how to draw a figure in motion. I can only attribute his beautiful paintings to his drawings because he learned the skill. I love this painting so much. One, because I teach landscape painting and we often find each other in our landscape paintings. And I've even had many students make a few paintings along these lines. So if you did make a painting like this, and I know some of you have, just go ahead and post it, because this is the other artists are out there painting some beautiful landscape in England, and he's painting the painter, painting the painter, painting the painter. And it's sort of a funny, it's a narrative, it's got comedy to it, but you can see that where his interest lies. It really lies in the narrative. It's not always just about a landscape. He really likes the figure in the landscape. This is one of the more Some people consider it one of the top 10 best paintings in the world. It's called The Fox Hunt. Again, look at the whites, look at the blacks, and look at the tones in between. Even though a color is a color, it's still got darkness or lightness to it, right? There's still gray or black or white or darks added to the color. So even though this fox is burnt sienna, he's got a lot of blacks added in and browns added in to really darken the tone of the color. This is called the fox hunt because normally it is the fox hunting the fowl. However, in this case, it is the bird attacking the fox and the fox running. That's the story. Maybe you've seen the movie Birds or read the book. That's what it reminds me of. But again, we have an interesting play of light and color where the brightest white is on the diagonal left side and the darkest dark is in the top right corner. And then he balances light over here with this bit of light and the light coming across. So again, compositionally, tonally, illustratively, he's nailed it every time. If you want to learn how to paint color and tone and ocean and humans, I would copy his work. It's called transcribing. That's the fancy word for copying. It means you get a book from the library and you copy it. You learn to paint it. You try to figure out what the brush strokes were that he was making, and you try to figure out, what the composition is that he was making. And that is some of the best way to learn. This painting is a great example of one of his watercolors, which he started painting watercolors after oil paintings because oil paintings took a long time and therefore were more expensive to sell. So he wanted to make some extra money. He decides to make some watercolors. They turn out to be some of the best watercolors ever made in the history of the world, in my opinion. He was not a purist, meaning that he would add white gouache back onto the paper. He would blot, and you can see in this image very clearly on the right side that he has blotted the sky. Some watercolorists say you can only go light to dark. You can back in. That's what and you can just go talk to the watercolor. I guess my internet's not working. I can still help. It might be a little louder. So again, we have the darks in the foreground, but he split up the lights for us. So you can see he gains a lot of different textures from the use of blotting, of adding gouache back in, of erasing back out. He would even rip his paper, erasing back out sometimes. We have the next image. Oh boy, I love this painting. Leaving whites in watercolor is very hard to do. And I'm sure in 1892, they probably didn't have some little tool that we call frisket, or a masking fluid, which is basically like a glue that you can put on your paper and then you paint and then you can pull it off and it'll leave the whites of your paper. Winslow Homer didn't have that. He just was really good at leaving the whites of his paper and understanding that in watercolor you can't get those back. So look at this beautiful, and I also think he does dark watercolor better than most. Like a lot of times watercolor is a very light, bright, translucent medium. So it's interesting to see someone use it in such a dark way with so many, night paintings with little light. He liked to depict the American scene. He did not discriminate on the people that he painted, all kinds of people. He painted different cultures. He painted boys, girls, African Americans. He painted in the Bahamas. He painted in England. He just wanted to paint people doing what they were doing in their natural setting. And that is what he was excited about, the figure in the landscape. I love this piece as well compositionally because that black board behind her and even the diagonals and the images that he's drawn on the board are sort of interesting shapes that go diagonal through her, creating an interesting set of gray tones, lights, and he did enjoy painting women. He did fall in love with a woman. I think I wrote down her name. No, I think I forgot to write down her name. Either way, she didn't marry him. She married a poet instead, and he never did marry. And it is said that he had, you know, plenty of friendly lovers, but not ever a wife, and that he didn't really have time for a wife because he would be gone painting all day, every day, and that's all he wanted to do. And that is why you can see his skill level is so incredibly high. Here's one of his beautiful watercolors from the Bahamas. So when you live in New York, what happens is you end up spending the summer going on vacation to the Hamptons or to other places, and you don't really stay in New York in the summer because it's hot and gross. So artists would leave for the summer, he would go on vacations, and he would do groupings of paintings. So these groups of paintings are obviously from each trip that he's taken. So there's a few snippets coming up here of different ones. Again, pay attention to these little details like this choice to put a dark in the corner here, a dark here, dark in this part of the tree, and these darks here, even right behind her to sort of carve out the shape of her around. This one I think was done in England, and it's appropriate for today. Beautiful watercolor pumpkins. There's a lot of movement, so he was really interested in the movement of the figure less than the face of the figure. So here we often see like little parts of the figure's face looking out on the distance, but not an up close really of the portrait. But you can see that he's moving, he's picking up the pumpkin, he's walking away, and that tells the story more than the facial features. This one is called Waiting for Dad, and you can see that the ships are coming in and he's hoping that his dad is on one of them. Again, a beautiful play of light and dark, and this is something to practice outdoors, just looking at light. You can see, you know, how the shadow casts the light onto the ground and how the sun hits certain things so much that they're basically white. And again, less face, more emotion than face. So he's telling you the story without giving you a facial expression, but you definitely get the mood that he's, you know, waiting and looking out to see for his father to come. You can also see that he's put gouache back on here. So he's put some white birds back in the white gouache. That just means an opaque medium, which means you can't see through it. So like a thicker white paint going back on top of a translucent painting to bring the whites back. And my last one here is called Moonlight and the Moonlight Lovers here. Another beautiful play of light to dark, light being in the background, dark being in the foreground. So now we're experiencing American life after the war. We're really getting to enjoy being human. Let's see if I can close this because it's really cold. And hopefully my internet stays. Okay, well, so I'm going to show you a little something here. So I think that was my last slide. So you've seen the slide. If you're in my handout, you got this right up here. And then there are some lovely videos, some which are much shorter. This one's only 10 minutes. You should absolutely watch that one. This one's really long. It's 500 paintings with classical music. So maybe while you're doing something else, they sort of just go through in a very slow slideshow, but beautiful, not slow, paintings. And then, I mean, there were so many good videos on him. So I did include several videos and a few articles to enjoy, but I mean, I gave you, I don't know, 20 paintings, and then I've added even more down here in the bottom. I will add the video to the bottom of this page when I'm finished. And if you've seen any Winslow Homer pieces that you want to tell me about or leave in the comment page, he's a really famous artist, so you've probably seen his work somewhere. Here he is right here. Happily with his painting. Master of motion, light, and composition. If you really want to know how to learn tone, I would just copy Winslow Homer. If you want to learn how to draw humans in motion, not emotion, but also emotion, like this, you know, they're moving, they're playing. That's hard to get with a figure model who's standing there because they have to keep their balance, right? So you really have to be able to catch these real life moments in motion and learn to draw them. And finally, here's my favorite painting again. So I know some of you in my class have made paintings like this in landscape class, or if you have something that's similar, or if you transcribe a Winslow Homer, go ahead and click on the comment page over here and leave a comment. You can please leave an image. I would love to see some images if you've gone to see any of his work, or if you make a work like his, or your version of what you've been inspired by today, or simply leave a comment. It's taking a moment to load. I was going to compare this artist to another artist named Doran Langberg, however, who I think is a phenomenal figure painter living and working today in New York City. Very young, upcoming artist. But I felt like his work is a little too controversial to be showing in this class. So if you want to check him out on your own, you can, but I left him out of this lecture because it was a little too much. So I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if you have any comments, you can type them in now, or you can unmute yourself, or you can leave them here on the comment page. Anybody? Well, I hope you have your costumes ready. And candy. Yes? Hi, Anna. Yes.
Can you tell me exactly what the name is of Landberg?
Doran. D-O-R-O-N.
Yes, Landberg.
L-A-N-G-B-E-R-G.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Painter, but definitely pushing the limits of your comfort zone. Okay. So
okay.
Katie?
I'll be prepared to be pushed.
Okay. And
Katie?
Yes?
In the painting that he did of the Bahamas,
yes,
in that upper right-hand corner was solid blue when the rest of the sky was multi. How did he get away with that solid blue?
Let me see. In the Bahamas? Oh,
yeah.
Look at that. In the corner there, huh?
Up there in the corner. It's all blue.
Yeah, look at that. Wild. Well, maybe it was it seems to me that this is a tropical storm cloud moving in. And maybe this is the bright blue sky that's about to get covered. But I do love that. And there's almost a diagonal, where's my arrow? There it is. A diagonal sort of dance coming across the whole page, because the only other place we get pretty blue is down here. But I do love that blue corner. I'm so glad that you saw that and mentioned it. Thanks, Pam. Anyone else excited? Something to say? All right, well, thanks for weighing in, and I hope you enjoyed this lecture. And there's some great videos on the site, so please enjoy them and have a great Halloween. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.